Thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you for having me. Such an exciting crowd. So many inspiring and very heterogeneous people and herein. And you wanna really to listen to a boring scholar and academic? I'm not sure. I will keep that. I will keep that very brief. It's a pity that we do not meet somewhere over there at Stanford. So, as Nikki has mentioned, 3 years ago, I had the pleasure to host a group like yours for an hour or so for a talk on Stanford University. I am born Austrian, and I'm still living in Austria right now. In the moment, I'm in Baden, which is close to Vienna, and which was a wonderful place for the lockdown period because it's in midst of the vineyards and in the Viennese wood, so it was quite nice here. My affiliation is the Vienna University of Economics and Business, WU Vienna, and I'm a business by training. I'm a management scholar, and I'm specialized in non-profit management. And this is not why I'm there. The reason why I'm there is that I do have some ties to Stanford University. I'm a member of the what we call Civic Cities Lab at the Stanford Center for Philanthropy and Civil Society, and we are doing research there on what we call the civic infrastructure of urban regions all across the globe. And I will tell you a little bit about that afterwards. I want to start to give you some impression, some figures of Stanford. Maybe I'm bringing coals to Newcastle or water to Danube or cheese to Amsterdam or what else. Maybe you are already familiar with that, but if not, then this might be interesting. So question is, what is so unique about Stanford University? And I'm trying to go to my screen. Let me have a look on that. So, does it work? You see anything? Okay.
Works. Looks good.
It works?
Looks good, yes.
Okay. You have already my presentation? No, it's just, yeah. So, wonderful. Okay. So, I guess this is this wonderful view. It's really a pity that I'm last year when I was there for 6 months, I finally decided that it's kind of our basic fundamental human rights to spend at least a month in April or in May. It's in Stanford University, mainly because of this wonderful climate, but not only because of the climate, but also because of what Nikki has called the intellectual buffet. Which, as usual for academics, I have stolen anyway. So this was coined by a colleague of mine in Stanford. If you key data on this university, as you maybe know, Stanford was founded by Jane and Leland Stanford. Sorry for the title. Leland Stanford was one of those railway tycoons. He was the owner of one of those railway companies that crossed the American continent, and they had a single son, and this son died from typhoid disease in Italy in the 1870s. And in memory of them, they founded this university for the young people of California. And what was, for instance, from the beginning on, very important for Stanford University is that it was a university that took care of equal rights. So from the beginning on, female students were not only permitted, but also very appreciated and invited. They also started very early a fight against racism, as the wealth of the Stanfords was mainly built on Chinese labor. They really tried to do something against those racist riots that happened in 19th century California against the Chinese immigrants. Some key data figures on the campus. This campus is very, very big. Stanford University consists of 7 schools: engineering, medicine, earth, energy and environmental science, education, humanities and science, business and law. There's a little bit more than 16,000 students and 13,300 staff members, more than 2,000 faculty and almost 2,000 postdoc researchers. So I always compare this data with my own university. Here in Vienna, we do have 25,000 students, 1,000 staff members, 1,000, not even 1,000 faculty, amongst them about 300 postdocs. So the relation, you cannot compare these universities. Still, in the moment, in this economic crisis we are facing right now as a consequence of the shutdown measures during the COVID-19 crisis, I'm really happy to be in a tax-funded university in Europe because even Stanford and most other of these elite universities in the US and in the UK and in Australia, they have been severely hit by this economic crisis. So they are losing all the 3 pillars of their income, which is earnings from their endowments, which is tuition, and which is research grants. And simultaneously, all these 3 pillars of their funding have not been vanished, but have been severely decreased. So my colleagues are telling me that they stop hiring, they cut expenses, they invite faculty members and staff members to reduce their salaries, etc., etc. Stanford alone has more Nobel Prize winners than the whole Republic of Austria. So Stanford alone has 13 Nobel Prize winners, and 21 of them are still living and working in Stanford. And since the Nobel Prize was founded, the Republic of Austria, or Austria at that time, it was still the Austro-Hungarian Empire, we only do have 24 Nobel Prize winners. The University of Stanford at the Olympics, the Summer Olympics in London, the University of Stanford won more gold medals than the Federal Republic of Germany. So this is just to give you an impression of the dimension of this university, and not only the intellectual dimension, but also the dimension of in sports and in economics, etc. So no question that Stanford University has become an engine for the innovative development of Silicon Valley. A couple of nicknames for Stanford University, which is the farm, because of the fact that it was built on farmland, and it's still those 33 square kilometers still consist of much farmland, cows, etc., etc. It is also called, or it has been called, the Get Rich University, because in the 1990s and in the early 2000s it was the desired land for all those that want to start up and get rich very quickly. In the 1960s and 1970s, it was also called the Cold War University, which was one of the reasons that it became so successful, because much of the defense budgets went into Stanford. I'm not sure whether you know that there is a telescope at Stanford campus, a very old one, which is not active anymore. And this telescope was the telescope which firstly detected the Sputnik satellite in 1961. So this was not an army telescope or a national telescope, but it was the telescope of Stanford University. There was much investment of defense budgets into the School of Engineering at Stanford, and thus Stanford has become one of the leading engineering schools of this world. So you must not compare Stanford with full-blown universities such as Harvard or Yale or Princeton, etc. You should rather compare Stanford University with MIT or with California Tech or rather technical universities. Okay, so interestingly, the slogan of Stanford University is "Die Luft der Freiheit weht." This is a line of a German poem from the 19th century. Means the wind of freedom is blowing, and Stanford has emerged as an idea factory, and as I've mentioned, as one of the backbones, if not the backbone, of the technological revolutions that happened in Silicon Valley. So IT spin-offs of Stanford are Hewlett Packard, Google, Sun Microsystems. I don't know whether you know that Sun stands for Stanford University Network. It was an IT company that was founded by IT guys that managed the Stanford administration IT network, Yahoo, Cisco, etc. In financial terms, you're not even getting envious when you compare Stanford University with, for instance, European universities. The endowment of Stanford University is $28 billion, and the annual budget is $5 billion. And this is more than the whole Austrian budget for science and development, which is only 3 point whatever billion. So a single university has more money than the whole Austrian higher education system. What is interesting about Stanford, and there are many things, and I will be open for your questions quite soon. What is very interesting for Stanford is that what I've learned is, unlike in European universities, there is a strict separation and a strict division between pure research and business R&D. So when I was there last time, I spent many hours with an Austrian professor for material physics, who is one of the world's leading scientists and researchers in this battery stuff for cars, etc. And he told us that whenever some technical development goes towards or incubation and business style research, researchers have to leave the campus, have to build and to rent their own laboratories, and this must not be confused with university money, which is strictly dedicated for pure research. So this is also true for the School of Engineering. Let me finish with two ideas that I got during my days in Stanford about why Silicon Valley has developed the way it did. Which causes did spark this enormous technological development there? And whenever you ask people living there, and maybe Nikki has some more explanations for that. Whenever you ask people that live there, the first argument they tell you is the climate. And this is really true. So I've seldomly lived anywhere else where the climate is so wonderfully moderate, cool
Does
in
not apply for
summer.
San Francisco.
Except completely right. San Francisco there is Carl, the cold fog, and it's not so nice to live in San Francisco. And the second argument, and this is for social scientists much more interesting, is that it is far away from DC. So in World War II, California was, due to the Pacific War, California turned out to be an important home base for instance, the aircraft industry and other parts of the military-industrial complex, Rand Corporation, McDonnell Douglas, and others were located at the West Coast. And many of them, for instance, NASA also in the Bay Area. And a friend of mine, Woody Powell from Stanford University, who is one of the most renowned organizational theorists of this globe, he told me that due to the long distance to DC, the controllers from the Pentagon were not able to appear in Silicon Valley within 24 hours. So they also they always had to give some notice before they came, and the engineers there, they then had enough time to hide all those stuff that they had done, which were not in the core of their tasks, and they playfully developed innovations there, which were paid by the Pentagon without the Pentagon controllers knowing about that. Okay. So much for that. So much about a few kind of informational pieces on this university. Feel free to ask me any questions before I can then step in the second part, which is about this research project.
Well, I have a question, Michael. If we compare, especially the system in Germany with the one in the US, and we speak about education, and when I go to the university in the US, especially Stanford, I leave university with high debt. So the question is it worth it, first of all? And do you feel, because people are more or less paying or investing in their future, that they are more motivated, that they're more open to learn, or are they, let's say, just normal students like everywhere in the world?
Sure, but I'm not sure. I completely agree with your diagnosis. That's completely true, Marcus. I'm not sure whether the investment part is the explanation. What I've experienced there, not only at Stanford University, but also with my daughters that went to high school over there, is that there is a different climate of intrinsically motivated learning, which starts very early. So our problem, especially in the Germanic countries, is that we believe in canon. We believe that we know what young people have to learn, and that's crazy. If you look at our curricula, both the high school level in the gymnasium and then in high education institutions, you will see very, very few opportunities for electives. And in the US system, and especially at those elite universities, it is 90% electives, and this starts at high school. This is the first stuff, the first issue, or the first reason, in my opinion. The second one is that we do have this culture of examinations, where we try to hinder students from betraying and whatever tough systems. This is in the US, and especially in those parts where this educational motivation is that strong. It is intrinsic motivation, and it is more or less a code of honor that you do not betray, neither at university nor at high school. So there is a completely different mindset when it comes to education, and I guess we have to change our system.
Can I also add something to the question? So it's the rule by thumb is that undergrad is 250K and grad school is 250K. So basically, you've spent $500,000 for your university education. So that's so far the theory. But Stanford has a lot of budget for scholarships.
Right.
And when you apply for Stanford, you go through a process. And the moment Stanford decides that you are a fit for the university, money shall not be in your way to study there. Right. So, for example, if your household income is under $115,000, you're considered poor, and then you wouldn't pay. And then it goes gradually up. So it can happen that you start the undergrad school at Stanford without paying at all, because they want you to be part of the university, of the students, of the body of the university, but they understand you can't afford it. That should not stand in your way. So Stanford has a huge budget for this.
Yeah. But that's especially for Stanford, right?
Yes.
It's not,
Yeah, but this is usual for all the elite universities. For the top 10 or 15 universities, they cannot afford anymore to not get the best and smartest students. So they do not build up tuition as a barrier. So they try to cancel that. And tuition fees is not a remarkable part of the Stanford income. So it's not so.
Okay. And also one thing from conversations with students I might add here is that, so you mentioned the numbers game already. It's 16,000 students, 13,000 staff. That's basically a teacher for a student. And I have heard so many stories that a student called a teacher and the teacher said, come over in the evening, and they would spend together until 4 a.m. working on a subject. So it's very, very, it's not like a teacher to a lot of student situation, but very one-on-one. And then another thing that I've learned, and I thought was very special for Stanford, is that you don't go for a specific subject to study at Stanford. You go to Stanford, and then in your first year, or in the sophomore year, or in the first 2 years, you actually determine your major.
Right.
So you start going to Stanford, and then you decide what are you actually studying, which I think is a very interesting concept, because how would you know? I mean, who of you knows what you guys are doing in 2 years, right? We're all adults in the room. Who of you knows what you're doing in 2 years? And now look back when you're 18 or 20 and you apply and work and study at Stanford, how would you actually know what you're going to study? I think that's also something that's really special for the university.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question too. I've heard Stanford has special processes that the entrepreneurship are supported. And so they are called, it's the startup university. What is the organizational background for this?
This is a good question. First, I guess, first of all, in the 1960s and 1970s, major Stanford professors, especially in the School of Engineering, were drivers of all those technological innovation processes. For instance, the former president, John Hennessy, he was president until 2016, president of Stanford University. He's a computer scientist. And I cannot even remember how many technological innovations he invented. This guy is so rich that he wouldn't need to work anymore for at least 2 decades or 3 decades. And this was always the mindset, especially in the School of Engineering, that you work as an academic, as a scholar for 2 years, then you switch to business, to technology firms, help them to invent some stuff there, then you come back to university and start doing teaching and pure research again. So there are no closed borders. There is an openness between academia and the field of technology firms. And this is singular for Stanford. But as I've mentioned, when you are in Stanford, you are not allowed to use any resources of the university for business-related research. So they are very strict in this way. They permit, they encourage you to switch borders permanently.
I think Stanford is in generally strong preparing students for work time after university. There's a program called Beam, and from day one, being a Stanford student, they prepare you for the time after university. And that might be working for a corporate. That might be finding your team to grow a startup. Whatever it is, from day one, there's a team supporting you on your future career path. Sorry,
I have a question. Thank you, Michael, for the explanation and history about Stanford. Very interesting. So I know Stanford have been to some. So I work in I'm a founder of an organization that it was a public policy actually that is called Startup Chile. I'm a member of the founder team. So we have a really strong connection with Stanford. I'm talking about 2010, 2011 when I worked there. So I have been to some courses and we usually got some Stanford teachers to our office. So they taught us a bunch of stuff. And this was like 10 years ago. And I have always actually wanted to take a more, not just like a course, but like an official master diploma or something related with Stanford. And I have had no the opportunity or the option to actually move to San Francisco for a bunch of reasons, like money reasons, a bunch of reasons. And sorry for my specific personal question to the rest of the room, but my specific question is how, very sincere, how worth it do you think it is? And how much will I gain if I just go to the continuing education or just online, options that Stanford has? Is that an option that you actually recommend? For many of us, which we have our business, we're entrepreneurs, we're running, we're doing a bunch of things. We cannot move to San Francisco, or maybe just, I don't know, wait and then later just apply for, I don't know, we really like research at a PhD or something similar. Well, in my case, when I'm older.
This is a good one and a difficult one, and I do not have a clear answer. So, know a couple of people that have attended the MBA program of the GBS of the Graduate Business at Stanford. For sure, this is a wonderful program, and especially in terms of networking, etc., etc. So you're not only gaining educational and cultural capital, but also social capital. Wonderful. It's super expensive. So this is where Stanford earns from students, not from the undergrads and the grad students, but from the executives. Yeah? I would rather recommend, and if you do have the money invested, I guess it's a good investment. Still a good investment, but I guess it's Nikki, do you know? It's
like 150K.
150K.
Yeah,
sure. I would rather recommend to do this more piecewise. So a little bit the way that I to kind of get a feeling of the culture of this university by being there for a couple of months and attending all these many courses and seminars that and you have experienced that caused me to call it an intellectual buffet. You have more interesting discussions, panel presentations on very recent and burning topics each day than we, for instance, do have in the city of Vienna. Yeah? And you're on one evening, I had to decide between a panel discussion between three Nobel laureates of economics and the German Ministry of Defense and the former security advisor of the US president, of President Bush, who is in Stanford. So this is a permanent challenge and a wonderful intellectual and fruitful challenge for just being there. You do not get any formal degree for that, but I guess there are a couple of scholarships from different institutions that can bring you to one of those centers, and especially in your field, maybe you have a look on the Stanford Center for Philanthropy and Civil Society, where I'm also affiliated to. They always offer opportunities for Europeans and people from abroad to be there for a few months. Yeah? So
Understand.
less investment, maybe even a
Yeah.
better return.
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
I have also one question. What's your experience? Do the students treat each other different from European students?
This is also a good one. So when I was there first time in 2015, it was at the height of these discussions on sexual harassment on US American campuses, and there was also a case at Stanford University. So for the undergrads, it is maybe just this cliche of how US American colleges work and how people treat each other. For the grad students, and especially then for the PhD students, it is different. They are so much involved in their studies. In terms, for instance, of nightlife, in terms of clubbing, of partying, Stanford is a super boring university. Yeah? Nothing happens. In Palo Alto, most of the restaurants close somewhere, and it's super quiet, and no students are there. There are only very few places where students meet in the evening. So, unlike in European university towns, students are really concentrated on their studies. There's not so much social life there.